Now it's recording. So good evening, one and all. Our speaker, Dr. Suresh Chandra Patel, he has retired as an associate professor from the Department of PG Department of Political Science and Public Administration, my own department in Sambalpur University, and he's my colleague. And I have seen and I have experienced academics in him. So that's the reason I requested him to deliver a talk on this platform, and his agreement to this informal invitation shows his academic interest. Now, as a convener, I was supposed to introduce the speaker and the topic. Today, the speaker will speak on human right. The exact title, Towards the Fourth Generation of Human Right, a Way Forward. Let me tell you that in Sambalpur University for so many years, he has been handling this human right paper. He has taught this paper across different batches. I have assigned the task of introducing the today's speaker to his own PhD student, Dr. Uma Shankar Pradhan. Now I request to Dr. Pradhan to introduce his own supervisor, who is today's speaker. Now, Dr. Uma, you can introduce this speaker today.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. I am very much thankful to you that you has given me an opportunity to introduce the today's keynote speaker of the academic talks, that is which you have already stated, that is fourth generation of human rights, a way forward. Dr. Patel was the keynote speaker of the today's discussions. As all of us know that he is the former associate professor of PG Department of Political Science and Public Administration, Sambalpur University, Jyoti Bihar Bulla. As a teacher and a good orator, he is well known to each and every student of Sambalpur University, as well as inside and outside the Odisha. He is joined as a lecturer, served more than the 18 years in different colleges of Odisha. In November 2008, he joined as a lecturer in PG Department of Political Science Public Administration, Sambalpur University, Jyoti Bihar Bulla, and served as associate professor and got retired on, that is, July 2021. Professor Patel is a specialist in human rights, as Dr. Mishra has already stated, in Indian political system and contemporary issues. As he is my guru in political science, Professor Patel has produced 3 PhD scholar as well as 1 DLit scholar, and guided more than 30 MPhil scholar while serving in the department. He has attended and participated presented paper in the 13 international, 64 national, and 6 state level seminar and conferences. Despite this, he acted as a resource person in many seminar and conferences. He also got the best speaker award from the ISDR Ranchi, and he has published as many as more than 24 papers in different journals. Above all, he is a life member of IPSA and OPSA, as well as he is once upon a time, that is, vice president of the OPSA, Odisha State Political Association. So let us start from the my political guru regarding the today's discussion on fourth generation of human rights and a way forward. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Uma, for this introduction. And let me tell you that I have seen different designation of Dr. Patel. I have seen lecturer. People have sent different academic staffs, and they have designated Dr. Patel as a lecturer, as a reader, as an associate professor, as a professor. Why
Yeah.
I'm telling all these things? Because he is a known figure. And let me tell that before I joined this university in 2017, my teacher, my plus two teacher, he knew Dr. Patel. So when he came to know that I joined Sambalpur University, then he took the name of Dr. Patel. If Suresh Patel is there, and I got a very good welcome from him. And in fact, I sit uh, in his chamber when I just enter into department. Okay, forget it. This is my personal experience with Dr. Patel. So as the convener, let me introduce the topic. The topic, I have already said it, I'm repeating, towards the fourth generation of human right, a way forward. Now, the talk will, in this talk, the speaker will concentrate around the basic idea of human right, why human right, what is human right, and how is human right. The speaker will outline the importance of human rights in the new millennium for democracy, development, and world peace. And this is the why part of this talk. So this talk, what I have understood from the abstract sent by Dr. Patel, three parts are there: why part, what part, and how part. And the second part will deal with the concept of human right, its evolution, its different phases of its growth from ancient time to after the Second World War. The third part will start with the generation of human rights from first generation to third generation, and at the end, the speaker will highlight the growing demand for the fourth generation of human rights all over the world. Along with it, the speaker will discuss various challenges in the way of realization of human right. He will convince us how all generation of human right will be possible today. He will certainly focus on different theories of human right, such as hegemonical theory, naturalist theory, populist theory, supranationalist theory, statist theory, and transnational theory, etc. And at the end, the speaker will stress on the importance of populist theory for the realization of fourth generation of human right. So we are all, sir, uh, quite anxious to understand your formulation, how you are going to relate populist theory with the fourth generation of human right. With this introduction, I once again welcome Dr. Patel to start his deliberation on this topic. Yes, sir, you can start now. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. It is audible?
Yes, sir, you are very much audible.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, for giving me this opportunity of interacting with you, and more particularly for your nice introduction. And more specifically, you have beautifully summarized the gist of the talk I am going to deliver today. In the abstract, I have given you, but the way you presented what I am going to speak has lessened my burden. That is a brilliant presentation. And before I will speak on that, I once again congratulate you for this brilliant academic series. This is a very unique thing that you are doing. You need to be congratulated. I don't know anyone in Odisha academic circle who is doing such academic talks in such a brilliant way. I think more than 50 or 60 professors might have spoken on this forum. So for that, from my side, I congratulate you. Then also I congratulate Dr. Uma, who is my first PhD scholar, for introducing me. He has been with me since long. He has participated with me in a number of seminars. Both of us have moved from places to places, in Odisha, in Chhattisgarh, in West Bengal, in Assam. Uma has been with me, and he has attended a large number of seminars along with me. And he introduced me nicely. So thanks, Dr. Uma, for your nice introduction. All the dear participants, I don't know, so most of you are students and other, if available, all of them, a very, very good evening to all of you. You see, when Dr. Mishra, once I had been to the university and he told me, sir, you have to speak on certain topics in this academic series. Most of you know that I am fond of speaking, I am fond of deliberating, I am fond of the uh, seminars, conferences, and all that. So I said, okay, I will do. And he again told me on what topic you will prefer, maybe on any topic. Then he somehow both of us said that we should be speaking on human rights. I know that I had been teaching human rights for a long time in the university, in the outside also. I have taught some of in so taken some classes, so I have got some ideas about human rights, and I thought I will be able to speak something on human rights. But what should be the exact title? What should be the exact title, or what should be the newness? Because most of the things that I might be talking to you today will be on the basic, the fundamental idea of human rights. And maybe most of them I must have talked in the classroom. Whoever were present, you might be little bit aware of it. But the question is, what is the fourth generation of human rights? That is the newness. That is the newness. And again, to link that newness, what is the populist theory? The populist theory and how to link the fourth generation, because most of the books on human rights, they don't refer to the fourth generation of human rights. The Karel Vasek, he is a writer. Karel Vasek right now has pointed out that there are three generations of human rights: the first generation of human rights, the second generation of human rights, the third generation of human rights. I will be coming to that later on. But what about the fourth generation of human rights? So that will be a new thing that the demand for that generation of human rights has started, but it has not become popular. It is growing. So what are the content and what are the forms of this fourth generation? That will be the new thing that I will be adding here. As Dr. Mishra was pointing out, I have divided my presentation in three parts. Part one, I will be speaking of on why human rights. Part two, I will be speaking on what is human, not how, what is human rights. And part three will be concentrating around how of human rights, or how the fourth generation, or how all the generation of human rights will be possible. So there will be three parts, and if time permits, and some of you may go for question sessions, or you may have some question to me, and we will have some interaction. So let me start with the first part of my presentation, and the first part of my presentation will be why human rights. That, in other words, I have to justify that why I prefer to speak on this topic. Some of you might be thinking that the topic of human rights by now is a old one. People have been talking about human rights. Seminars have been conducted in human rights. Conferences are taking place. Books have been written. Lot of academic engagement are being done on human rights. So another debate or another presentation on human rights may not be necessary, may be redundant, or may look a little bit of unnecessary. But let me repeat you, that is not going to happen. Remember, there are certain things which are evergreen, which never loses their importance. Rather, their importance increases in with time, and human rights is one such area. To begin with, the importance of human rights can be briefly discussed in only one sentence, that human rights are the cornerstone of human civilization. We can say that human rights are the alpha and the omega of humanity's quest for a better existence. As you know, Aristotle, the father of political science, pointed out that the state came into existence for the sake of good life, but continues in existence for the sake of good life. So, for the sake of life, the state came into existence, but for the sake of good life, the state is continuing existence. And that good life, today, people are talking quality life or a good life. And the concept of good life is ever changing. Today, the concept of good life is something. Tomorrow, the concept of good life will be something else. Day after tomorrow, there will be something like quality life, and the content, the form, and the characteristics of good life will be different. So long as people are, or humanity is in search of a good life, a quality life, today we call it quality life, human rights will be a growing subject. So those of you who are speaking that, or who are thinking that it would have been better if I would have spoken on something like the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Today, you know, Russian invasion of Ukraine has been in news, the print media, the electronic media all over the world. And a lot of debate and seminars, discussions are going on that, that what will be the repercussions to the global community on this. So speaking on Russian invasion of Ukraine would have been more interesting. Some of you might be thinking that I would have talked on the Mandir Masjid issue. You know, in India today we are talking about Aurangzeb and the Mandir Masjid uh, conflict. Today that is going on in Indian politics. Indian political system is witnessing the Mandir Masjid dispute, and a seminar on a topic or a debate on that might have been more interesting. I could have talked on human empowerment. I could have talked on climate change. I could have talked on assembly election. I could have talked on Navjot Singh Sidhu's arrest after 33 years, and that necessitates the judicial reforms in India. How judiciary in India is functioning. That the person for 33 years he was moving, and right now he is under jail for a 1 year. So that speaks for the importance of judicial reforms in Indian democracy, or the need for uniform civil code, or the need for a number of things are there, a number of topics are there, a number of global issues are there, or maybe Quad. Today, you know, within a day or two, the Quad summit has come to an end, where India, Australia, Japan, and you know, all the four countries, they were there, America, they were there, and on the other hand, the China, the Russian, and the North Korean, they were demonstrating their might in the Indo-Pacific Ocean. So my point is that there are large number of topics. There are topics which appear to you to be more interesting, and when in which topic I could have spoken. But in spite of all those topics, I decided to speak on human rights. The reason is that human rights is related to all these topics. Whatever global problems, whatever global issues are there, that is either directly or indirectly related to the concept of human rights. Or to put it in other words, had there been human rights or the proper enlargement of human rights to all parts of the globe, or had there been recognition of human rights, then probably some of the global issues may not have taken place. Or human rights today is taken as a yardstick to measure how the critical issues or the critical global issues can be solved. Or to simplify the matter, if all countries of the world they take care of the rights of the people, their people within their country, then probably some of the global issues which are coming in the form of whatever I told, the global issues, they will not take place. So human rights is something which is of paramount issues and which dominates the agenda of global critical issues. So therefore, to speak on global issues, we have to address the concept of human rights. And the concept of human rights today, is all being used as a yardstick to measure all over the world how the governments of different countries of the world they are fulfilling the developmental aspirations of the common man. So in the first place, that is the reason for which I spoke on the human rights. Then coming to the second part of the development, second part of the justification, you know, uh, human rights needs to be talked for another thing. If you are a serious student of Indian political system or even in the global issues, you will be finding that there are certain words which are dominating the Indian political system rather all over the world. And one such word is development, the other word is democracy. Development and democracy are two buzzwords along with human rights which are dominating the global political scenario. Development, and development. Much is being said, much is being talked about the concept of development. People are worried about development. They vote on the basis of developmental aspirations. So development is another important idea, another important term which is dominating the Indian political system, particularly in the recent times, and of course all over the world. People needs development. It is development and development and development, and more so in Indian political system. Now the question is, development is also related to the concept of human rights. When I speak in 2022, and I am speaking about development, today when there are large number of people in the country, those who are not satisfied with the level of development the Indian political system has witnessed. Some people are talking that even after we will be celebrating the Amrit Mahotsav, the 75 years of independence very soon. And in the 75 years of independence, we will be going for self-introspection. And much of the critics or much of the people, those who are not satisfied with the level of development India has achieved, they are pointing out that development has not been possible in the way it should have been. And what is the reason? It is not that efforts have not been made. In fact, if you look into the Indian political system, you will find that there have been numerous efforts, there have been tremendous efforts on the part of the political system from the leaders, demagogues, politicians to achieve development of the men, common men, last men. And large number of policies, large number of programs, large number of things have been done, starting from the Community Development Program of 1956 till the Narega or something like that you talk today. We have large number of policies and programs for the development of the common man. But even now, the development has not taken place in the way it should have taken place. And there are a number of reasons for this. But one of the reasons that is necessary for this presentation is that the common man in the developmental aspirations, the government has committed a mistake. And what is that mistake? The mistake is that the common man has not been taken care of. Sometimes I speak that three things are very, very important in the life of a country. Men, there are three M's. Men, M for men, do, M for machines, and third, the materials. Men, money, and materials. Three things are very, very important. Anybody can say. If I will ask you a question, that you make a priority list, which is number one, which is number two, and which is number three. So most of you will answer that number one is, some of you will say that money is more important than material. Some of you will may say that material is more important than money. Or some of you might say that man is more important than both. So this is a simple question, and the answer is also simple. And most of you, including me, we can say that man is the most important one. Out of the three M, men is most important one, because men can create money and men can create material. but not vice versa. Material cannot create men, or money cannot create men. This is a simple thing, but unfortunately, it took a long time for the policy makers, for the policy planners of Indian political system to realize that men should be taken care of. Common men, common human being should be taken care of. They, there should be the provision of roti, kapda, and makan. Everybody should get food, everybody should get clothes, everybody should get shelter. And they should also get, along with all the basic needs, they should have education, they should have health, and they should have all those things which are necessary to live a life of dignity and worth. But unfortunately, the policy planners of the Indian political system took a long time to realize that men are the most important assets of a country. And now people all over the world are realizing that it is not wealth, it is not any other thing which is more important. Rather, it is human being, or human beings are the most important assets of a country. And the human beings that we are having in this country, the quality of human beings that we are having is far from satisfactory. If you look into our human beings, our literacy rate is not very encouraging. Even those who are literate, they are not interested in the political process of the country. They are not interested what is happening where. They are not interested in education. They are not interested in taking care of the common man. They are not interested in good things all around happening there. So the quality of human beings that we have in this country is far from satisfactory. And that has been one of the reasons for which the development has not been possible. And this has not been possible because the government has not taken care of the quality of human beings that we have. And that again is related to the concept of human rights. And therefore, today, when we talk of development, we are talking about a new concept of development, that is human rights approach to development. That is, in other words, we call it HRD approach to development. Today, when you speak of people-centric development, so and this people-centric development can be possible only by participation of the common man. And common man can participate in the developmental process only by having the basic human rights. If they get food, if they get clothes, if they get shelter, if they get some scope for reading, for good health, then they will be educating themselves and they will participate in the political process, developmental process of the country. So even if development, you will find the common man or the participation of the common man is necessary. So when you talk of development, even the same is true about democracy, you will find. When you talk of the survival of the democracy also, the concept of human rights is very, very important. Today, all over America and the rest of the world, there seems that they are divided between two things. That on the one hand, democracy is there, and of course, on the other hand, communism is not there, but a different sorts of thinkings or political ideologies are there. So when you talk about the survival of democracy of the people, Abraham Lincoln pointed out that democracy is a form of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So if that is the essence of democracy, then again people are the cornerstone of a democratic form of government. And if people are not educated, if people are not aware, if people, Lord Bryce once pointed out that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. So people has to be vigilant. People has to be alert. People has to be 24 into 7 in a positive mode, active mode, so that democracy can flourish. Democracy can flourish and all that. So for the survival of democracy also, you will find we need human rights. And not only that, if you look into the past history, you will find that governments, economic system, religions, or ideologies, they either remain popular or they are not popular on the basis of the fulfillment of the basic human needs of people. I will be citing two example. Today you will find that lot of changes are being taking place in Islam. Religions remain viable, or religion becomes popular so long as it satisfies the basic human needs of the people. Today in Indian political system, we witness that the Muslims in India are going towards a different side. They are aware of their developmental aspirations, and they are aware of their growing demand for the basic fulfillment of basic human needs. So Islam or maybe Hinduism or maybe Christianity or maybe any other religion remains relevant only so far as it fulfills the basic human needs of the people. The moment it stops fulfilling the aspirations of the people, or it creates problem in the way of the aspirations of the people, you will find the religions become irrelevant. I can take another example of ideology. For example, communism today. Communism, as you know, is dead. We don't find communism is either dead or in the process of death. Communism has lost. People are talking that communism has lost. Well, it lost because communism failed to satisfy the basic human needs of the people. Some of you might argue that now communism gives you the food, clothes, and shelter, the economic democracy. I agree, but man is not only a economic animal. Man, human beings are also a political animal. The moment, the moment you fulfill your belly, you start speaking. And one of the defects of communism is that it will not allow speaking, and it is for that reason communism has failed. So what I want to say is that whether you talk of governments, you talk of economic system, you talk of ideology, you talk of religion, you talk of all these things, they are either important for people or not important for people. It depends upon their fulfillment of the basic aspirations, basic needs of the people. So there is another reason for which human rights is an important topic. And lastly, in the first part of my presentation, I will speak only one more point. Learning or knowing about human rights, if all of us, if all individuals know about human rights, what are human rights, then it will create an atmosphere or of peace in the world. Learning about human rights of one will automatically make you aware about the rights of others. And this is the way to move for a peaceful and tolerant societies. You must be witnessing that today intolerance is growing. Not only in Indian political system, all over the world, including America and the Western countries, you will find intolerance. People are intolerant. Intolerant in Indian politics, intolerant in American politics. Somebody is killing someone. If you have gone through the newspaper, you will find a day after yesterday, an American boy has killed probably 23 people or something like that. So intolerance is there. Even in India, the debate is going on. The intolerant group, that some people are talking that Indian democracy is not fit, it is intolerant, and it is not possible to live in this country. So intolerance is growing. Everywhere intolerance is growing and growing. And this is because of lack of knowledge about human rights. Once you know about the rights, once you know your own rights, that makes you automatically aware about the rights of others. And as a good citizen, if I know my rights and if I acknowledge at the same time the rights of others, then that will lead to a peaceful society. And that will also automatically lead to a global peace. So I don't have to prove my point on the first part of my presentation that these are some of the factors or importance of human rights why I decided to speak on this. Let me come to the second part of my presentation, that is what is human rights. I know all of you are aware what is human rights. I'm not going to speak more on that. I'm not going to give some definitions and all that about human rights, but I will speak some certain things that in simple words, human rights means the rights of human beings. To make this plain, we all are human beings. We have got a physical system, we have got a body, and we have got a mind. Our body needs has some certain requirements, and our mind has got some requirements. For the growth of the body, for the growth of the mind, we need certain conditions, we need certain situations, or to develop our personality, we need certain conditions. And these conditions in very simple word, is known as human rights. A lot of writers, a number of writers have tried to define the concept of human rights on their own way. But if you look into the origin of the concept of human rights, then you will find the term human rights has been taken from the word homo, which means human being or something belonging to human beings. And the classic phrase human rights has been taken from the classic phrase the rights of men, or the first men who have made use of the uh, phrase human rights is probably the Roosevelt in his famous message to the Congress in January 1941. Theodore Roosevelt of USA was giving a message to the Congress in 1941, and in the 1941 you'll find he referred the rights of human being, the rights of human rights of human being. So human rights, when you speak of the beginning, that is the way it has come. A number of Thomas Jefferson, for example, a number of writers like Thomas Jefferson, I.L. Horowitz, or Hrd Peck, D.D. Gosu, and Ivor Jennings. A number of writers are there who are trying to give their definitions of human rights. They have tried. I'm not going to give you all these definitions here. I will just summarize these definitions. If you look into these definitions of human rights, you will find. But let me point out from the very beginning that it is very difficult to define human rights. But what is more difficult is to ignore to define human rights. You might be thinking that human rights is an easy thing. It might be easy to define. And writers have given a large number of definitions. But let me point out, even today, no two authors agree on, or there is no definition which is unanimously accepted all over the world as the best definition of human rights. We cannot. If you ask me a question, sir, please give the best definition of human rights, then I will say, sorry, I am not in a position to give you the best definition of human rights. I can give you a definition, but I cannot give you the best definition. And the reason is very simple. And what is the reason? The reason is that human rights is a subject which deals with human beings. And human beings are unpredictable. They are changeable. And human rights differs from time to time, place to place, situation to situation, country to country, and even in the same country, from one segment to another segment. To make simplify this matter, what is human rights for Americans may not be a human right for Indian, or what is a human right for an Indian in Delhi may not be a human right for uh, a person who is living in the remote areas of the country. So human rights is a dynamic subject. It is a vast subject. It changes from time to time, place to place, and people to people. Human right for an African people is different from human right for an Indian people. Human right for a Muslim is different from human right for a Hindu. For example, Muslims in Afghanistan, they are pointing out that they are not interested in using hijab. If you have gone through media, print media and electronic media, you must have noticed that the paper, the news readers, the girls who are reading news in Afghanistan, they are not interested. They are talking that you are not interested in putting on hijab while presenting news. But in India, you will find in Bangalore and somewhere, we are demanding, the girls and Muslim girls are demanding that we will not go to schools and colleges without hijab. You see the different things. So some Muslims in Afghanistan, they are of the opinion right to not to wear hijab, but in India they are demanding right to wear hijab. So this is changing different from place to place, situation to situation. So you cannot give a perfect definition of human rights. That we must remember. And even no one has given, and right now we don't have any satisfactory definition which is accepted by people all over the world as the best definition of human rights. That is not going to happen. Then how can you say that the human rights, how can you locate it, or what are the basic features of human rights? Human rights are universal, they are inviolable, they are inalienable, they are inherent, and these are some of the basic characteristics of human rights. They are universal. It means human rights belongs to everyone. From north to south, from east to west. The moment you are a human being, you have certain rights. And these are human rights. You may be black, you may be white, you may be rich, you may be poor, you may be men, you may be women, you may be somebody, you may not be from a developed country or from an underdeveloped country, but that is not going to prevent you from enjoying certain rights. Remember, people all over the world, everybody, the moment you are a human being, you have got certain rights. So human rights are universal. They are inalienable. What does it mean inalienable? The rights that you have, nobody can take it away. Nobody can say, even Hobbes pointed out that in the state of nature you will find that the individual surrendered all of their rights to the sovereign, to the Leviathan, except one right. And that is right to self-preservation or right to live. So right to life is an important right. And even Locke pointed out in the state of nature that the people didn't surrender their right to life, right to self-preservation. So that is inviolability. It is inalienable. Nobody can take your human right. Then inviolable. Nobody can violate your human right. Because the moment you violate, your human rights are violated, you cease to become an individual. You cease to become an human being. You are reduced to the status of an animal. And human beings reduced to the status of an animal is very dangerous. So human rights are inviolable. And also human rights are inherent. Inherent means the moment someone takes place in the birth, automatically human rights belongs to him or her. Nobody has to give you. The moment you take birth, you come with certain rights, and therefore human rights are inherent. There are different uh, categories of human rights. I was just referring. I will be coming in the later part of my presentation, but here just I will refer. There are different types of human rights: civil rights, political rights, social rights, economic rights, cultural rights. These things are there, or even right to development, right to peace. The third generations are there. But what is more important is that even today, little effort has been made. What is more distressing or what is more confusing is that even after so much of debate, so much of discussion, so much of books on human rights, so much of conferences, so much of reading and teaching, you will find even today we don't have a clear cut, a comprehensive totality of human rights. If you ask me a question, sir, you give a list of human rights that a human being is enjoying or you are enjoying, and I will say, sorry, I don't have a list. I cannot give you a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. These are because no such efforts have been made. There has been little efforts to comprehend or codify all the human rights that human beings enjoy. That is not available. And what is more important is that the content of each human right. For example, we might have right to life, or I might have right to food, or right to education. But what is the details inside it? What type of education? Just going to the school, government school, getting midday meal, getting a meal or some dress, sitting for 2 or 3 hours and coming back? Or right to education means I shall go to the school, I will have school teachers student ratio, the teacher will give proper attention to me, I will be given a proper clean place to sit, I will have paper, column or TV for example to go into the news. So these things, the content of each right is also not there. So we are helpless. On the one hand, we don't have a complete list of human rights. And on the other hand, even those rights that we don't have the content of all these rights, what it implicates or what it implies exactly. For example, I was just giving the example of right to education. That right to education means just simply going to the school or going to school for a quality education. That is not there. So therefore, we are in a very sorry state of affairs so far as the definition, meaning, and characteristics of human rights is concerned. But that is another thing, because that is the reason I told you that human rights is a growing subject, it is a vast subject, it is going on, and it will process. Then, in this part of my presentation, I will again be speaking on the evolution or growth of human rights. That is another part in this part. You see, today we are talking about human rights. For some years, we have been talking about human rights. But human rights is not something new. Human rights is something which was there, which is an old subject. And if you look into the Indian context and the global context, human rights provisions of human rights or human rights awareness was there. I will divide my presentation into two parts. In the first part, I will be just telling you how human rights idea were present in ancient India. As an Indian, for example, we should be happy. We should be happy that we belong to a country where the religious books gives ample meaning and definition or references of human rights. If you look into the Indian ancient scriptures of India, then you will find that there are references about human rights. And we can go back to 1367 BC, 1367 BC. As early as 1367 BC, we can find that there is some reference where the concept of human right was available in the rudimentary form. And if you look into 1367 BC, then there is an agreement between the Bahmani emperor and the Vijayanagara king. Both the kings of Bahmani and the Vijayanagar, they entered into an agreement. And what was that agreement? The agreement was that they will not kill the unarmed subject praja, that is means subject here means praja, farmers of either side. In the war, there are people who don't have arms, and both the empire, they made an agreement that they are not going to kill unarmed subjects, or they also provided for the human treatment of prisoners of war. Those who are prisoners of war, they will be given proper treatment. So what is this? This is nothing but the rights of human rights idea in its most rudimentary form. In the rudimentary form, we find that the idea of human rights was available even in 1367 BC. Let me again give you another example. Even in the Atharva Veda, in the Atharva Veda, you will find that there is a paragraph. There is a small paragraph which speaks about human rights in that period. And the paragraph starts with man is not an individual, man is social organ. A lot of things are in there between, but in the middle there is a sentence. And what is that sentence? Man thus lives, works, and dies in society possessed of certain inalienable rights. This is the most important sentence in that paragraph. So there is a clear-cut reference in the Atharva Veda in this paragraph where it has been pointed out that man thus lives, works, and dies for society possessed of certain inalienable rights. And this is the concept of human rights in the rudimentary form. And he further goes again, the Atharva Veda points out that it is responsibility of the human being to take care of the posterity and the ancestry, to the past and the present and the future, from a happier today to a happier tomorrow, from poverty to prosperity. I have not gone through the paragraph systematically, but I was just giving you the essence of the paragraph. The paragraph in the Atharva Veda points out that man is not an individual. Today you will find there is a problem. Today in the 21st century, all human beings have become individual. I have become individual. I think of myself, I, me, best. It is always me, myself first. Everybody is individual. We are acting, we are living like an individual. I think of myself from 24 into 7. What should I go? Where should I go? What should I do? What is my benefit? What should I get? So we are individual. But Atharva Veda is pointing out, no, man is not an individual. Man is a social organ. He is an organ of the society. He is an organ of the society, and as an organ of the society, he has to take care of the posterity, the ancestry, the poverty to prosperity, the happy today to happier tomorrow. And that is human being. That is the essence of the human being. So Atharva Veda also will find we have got certain things. In Jilavalka Smriti and Narada Smriti also, we have references about human rights. But I am not going to that detail. I will refer another important saint, that is Patanjali. Patanjali, Baba Ramdev and all that today. Patanjali is talking about 5 yama and 5 niyama. He has talked about 5 yama and 5 niyama. And what are the 5 yama? The 5 yama are that non-possession. We should not possess more. We should not possess more. Non-possession. Non-theft. We should not commit theft. We should not commit theft. That means chori karibo nahi. And non-violence. Non-violence. Ahimsa. Ahimsa. And truth. We should always speak truth. Truth. And lastly, total abstinence. We should not spend more. So Patanjali is talking about 5 yama. I gave you all the 5. They are yama. And all these yamas are there. And he also speaks about 5 niyamas. And what are the 5 niyamas? 5 niyamas are surrender to God. All individuals should surrender to God. Then study of scriptures. We should read religious books, study of scriptures. Then penance. Then purity. Then contentment, trupta, santushta. So these are 5 niyamas. So Patanjali, who was a great saint, he has talked about 5 niyama and 5 yama. And what was the aim? The aim was that Patanjali wanted to establish a society, a egalitarian society, a society where people are self-satisfied, contented, pure, and they are not running after money, not materialistic, and they will help you in establishing a egalitarian social order. So that was the Patanjali, as early as that period, was speaking about, and the aim was to establish a society where all these things will be there. So this is the idea of human rights in the rudimentary form. Even if you go to Ramayana and Mahabharata, you will find that the concept of human rights were available. In Ramayana, we find references where Lord Rama will advise Lakshmana not to use weapons of mass destruction. Not to use weapons of mass destruction because this will kill the innocent people. Lord Rama has advised Lakshmana in Ramayana that you should not use. This is prohibited in ancient laws of warfare, because if you use weapons of mass destruction, that will also kill innocent people, and this is prohibited in the ancient law. So what is this? This is nothing but the human rights in the rudimentary form. Then even in the Mahabharata you will find Krishna refrained Arjuna from using Pasupata Astra by telling that this is a very hyper destructive weapon, and this will destroy the killing of, or this will destroy the innocent people. So even in Mahabharata you will find Krishna refrained Arjuna from using Pasupata Astra, a weapons of mass destruction. So if you look into 1367 BC till date, Mahabharata and all that, you will find the ancient India was full of glimpses, references about the concept of human rights. So as a Indian, we should be happy about the concept of human rights, that it was available in the ancient scriptures of India. Then what is the situation in the global context? That is the point. And here I will be coming. So far as global context is concerned, again let me start by telling that this is again not only a new in the global arena also. Even in the Western world, in the global arena, you will find from Aristotle to Saint Augustine to Mencius to present day philosophers, people have been talking about human rights. They have talked about human rights and human rights. Everybody, people have fought for it. The deprived, if you go to all ages, the deprived, the uneducated, the persecuted, religious minority, linguistic minorities, racial minorities, all of them, they have fought for their human rights. But the question is that in the path of development of the human rights in the global arena, you will find we just find the references that the development has not been straightforward. And most of the development of the global arena were limited to the Western world. And there are some milestones where, from where you will start, you will find we have got the first generation, we have got the second generation, we have got the third generation, then we are going for the fourth generation. But before I'll be coming to this generation, let me point out that in the first part we have got the Athenian democracy and Roman law. When you talk of the development, the idea of human rights in the global context or the Western world, we find some references in the Athenian democracy and Roman law. If you look into the democracy in Athens and law of Rome, you will find in both of them we have got they permitted human rights for some, not for others. There are certain provisions. They made provisions for human rights. Then we can talk about the Bill of Rights, the adoption of Bill of Rights. And of course, before that, we have got the Magna Carta of 1215, which limited the power of the King John of England. That is another important development in the development of the human rights. Today, you talk of human rights, fourth generation. I will be talking rather later on. Karel Basak has talked about three, and today all over the world, people have started talking about the fourth generation. And the beginning has been made here. The King John of England and his power is restricted by the Magna Carta of 1215. So that is another important milestone in the way of the development of the fourth generation of human rights. Then you will find the Reformation movement of 16th century. The Reformation movement of 16th century broadened the scope of individual in religious matter, or it gave a large number of religious freedom. So Reformation movement is another important development or milestone in the global arena, in the Western world. Then we can talk about the French Declaration of Rights of Men, 1789, the American Declaration of Independence, 1791. Then we can talk of Treaty of Berlin, 1878, which restricted the Balkan countries and the Turkey from respecting the minorities and their rights. So in the global arena, in the Western world, you'll find that these are some of the important milestones which came. And of course, all these developments were restricted to only one part of the world, that is Western world. And the true development of human rights as a global approach, or in a globally taken place with the League of Nations. But the League of Nations, as you know, was limited to only one thing. The League of Nations only pointed out that because of the provisions of the World War I treaties, peace treaty, the League of Nations was entrusted with the task of maintaining or protecting the rights of racial minorities. Besides this, the League of Nations did nothing. So the contribution of League of Nations was not very splendid. Then you will find we have got the Atlantic Charter. The Atlantic Charter of President Roosevelt and Winston Churchill in 1941 is another important development which brought the concept of human rights. But if you look into the global area, you'll find the best contribution of the credit goes to the United Nations. The United Nations, you know, after the Second World War in 1945, pointed out clearly in the preamble of the Charter of the United Nations that promotion of world global peace is one of the basic objectives of the global community. So therefore, the responsibility for giving or popularizing the concept of human rights the credit goes to the United Nations. And you know, the United Nations, when we talk about the United Nations and thereafter the growth of human rights, you will find in the modern time, we are talking about 4 phases of the growth of human rights. From 1945 to 55, from 1955 to 65, from 1965 to 75, and from 1976 onwards. It is continuing. So the first phase of the growth of human rights is from 1945 to 55. This period was a period of normative period or a period of standard setting. During the first phase from 1945 to 55, the only thing that the world community, the United Nations did was popularize the concept of human rights. They imprinted in the minds of the people of the world that there is something called human rights. By 1945, the people all over the world, they were not aware that because because of the devastating situation in the Second World War, they were not happy that what about their rights, what will be their futures. But after the Second World War and the formation of the United Nations on October 24, 1945, the first thing that the United Nations did is that you are a human being. As a human being, you have got certain rights. So this was a period of idea, normative period, a standard setting period, and some institutions were created. And that is what the adoption of Universal Declaration of Human Rights was taken place. The UDHR, December 10, 1948, you will find that Universal Declaration of Human Rights took place. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is nothing but the Bible of human rights. It consists of 30 articles, and in these 30 articles, you will find all the rights, all the civil rights, all the political rights, all the social rights, all the economic rights, all the cultural rights, all the right to development, third generation of rights, right to development, right to peace, right to environment, all these things. The first, second, third generation of rights, everything included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So the period one was a period of standard setting. It adopted certain institutions, but the defect with the first phase was that it was a period of talking and not doing something. On the one hand, the United Nations was speaking human rights, human rights, human rights. Human rights is great. Human rights we should protect and promote. There should be UDHR or there should be as international covenant on economic, social, and cultural rights, or international covenant on civil and political rights. Then optional protocol. All these things are there. But what is the defect? The defect is that on the other side you will find rampant violations of human rights were taking place all over the world. From 1945, that was the period of decolonization, African resurgence, Asian resurgence you'll find. And from all over the world during that period, the rampant violation was taking place all over the world. And then that came to an end. From 1955, the world community, the United Nations realized that they have committed a mistake. And what is that mistake? The mistake is that they have started talking and talking and talking. Instead of doing something concrete, instead of preventing violation of human rights, they have talked about human rights and human rights. And this was a period of rectification. So they make amendment, they make rectification. And what they did? They tried to rectify the situations of the past phase, and they did something concrete. And what they did? Special reporters were appointed to look into human rights situations, and provision of advisory services were also made. So the United Nations appointed special reporters all over the world to move into different parts of the world and see what advices we need or what is happening in reality. And as a result of that, by the end of 1965, you will find some sort of achievements in the field of human rights protection and promotion could be possible. Then you will find, then we come with the third phase. And the third phase, 1965 to 75, you will find was a period of direct action. Now the governments and the United Nations all over the world, they became very, very aggressive about the protection and promotion of human rights. They appointed special reporters all over the world. Reporters moved from Asia, Africa, Latin America, from one part of the country to the other part of the country. And they look into, if there is a violation, the reporter will go there, look into they will report it, they will come to the United Nations, and there some decisions will be taken. And by the end of the third phase, you will find the world community were getting serious about the business of human rights in the world. And an inquiry was instituted, and all those things were taking place for the protection and promotion of human rights. And by 1976, you remember, human rights became an international concern. That is the fourth phase of development. By the fourth phase of development, you'll find that human rights become an international concern. Now people all over the world, they started demanding punishment for the violation of human rights. Now, if you violate human rights, the government, the world's leader, you cannot go free. You have to be punished for the violation of human rights. And in the fourth phrase, you will find there were two perspectives. One perspective is from the Western perspective, and the other perspective is of African perspective. The Western perspective was that they were very jealous about the protection of the first generation and the second generation of human rights. The civil rights, the political rights, and the social rights, economic and cultural rights. So these two generations of human rights was the main center of attraction so far as the Western world is concerned. Even today, if you go to the Western world, you'll find they are very possessive about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and all that. The first generation and the second generation of human rights. So this is the Western perspective, and this perspective was reflected by a writer called Ahmad Yamini. AHMD Ahmad Yamini represent this perspective that the Western world was very jealous about the protection and promotion of the first generation and second generation of human rights. But in contrary to the first and second generation, the third generation of human rights you will find was represented by Ove Legacy. Legacy is an African writer, and he is pointing out that individual rights are not important, rather community rights are more important. And the third generation of human rights, as you know, is because of global interdependence. We have got certain global problems, global issues, and global problems and global issues can be better solved by global solution. And they put it the category of right to peace, right to development, right to environment. These three belongs to the third generation. And the third generation of human rights is known as also community rights. And legacy, the African perspective pointed out that the African community rights are more important than the individual rights. So on the one hand, we have got the Western perspective. On the other hand, we have got the African perspective. And in both the perspective, both of them taken together, they represent three generations of human rights. The first generation, that is civil and political rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, and all that. And they are the result of the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and you will find they are negative in nature. I think, Dr. Mishra, am I taking more
No,
time?
no, it's okay, not a problem. I was about to request you to take a glass of water. So you kindly take a glass of water and kindly conclude it. I mean, I don't have any restriction. You have to give justice to your topic.
Mumbai, it is 7:10. I will be cutting short. Otherwise, it will be too late. But let me be brief as far as possible. So the first generation, as you know, civil and political rights. The second generation, are the product of the Russian Revolution. They are the product of the welfare state. Right to education, right to work, right to rest, and all these things are there. I'm not going to elaborate that. You all know that the third generation of human rights, that is the result of the global interdependence and modern period. Global interdependence. Today, we are living in a world where everybody is interconnected, interdependent, and interrelated. So the third generation of human rights points out there are some global issues and global problems. And these global problems cannot be solved by individual efforts. There has to be global efforts. For example, right to development. The advocates of the third generation of human rights, they are pointing out that development is not possible. Development in one part of the world is not sufficient for the development of the whole world, because underdevelopment in other part of the world will create problem for the development in one part of the world. And the best example is Russian-Ukraine invasion. You see, one development in the one part of the world is automatically affecting the other part of the world. So therefore, right to development is a global problem, and this can be solved by all countries of the world. The right to peace, for example, you can demand for right to peace. I want to live in peace, but that is not going to happen unless my neighbor and all others around me, they also have similar attitude. They also have the right to peace. So therefore, right to peace is a global problem. either we all must be in a peaceful way, peaceful world, or we all must suffer. And that is what is going to happen right today. That because of Houston, the price rise is going on all over the world. The economic problem is coming. Inflation is rising. And we don't know if the war continues for another 1 or 2 months between the Russia and Ukraine, what will happen to the global community? What will be the price of petrol? What will be the price of the wheat? Whether wheat will be available or not. So this is not going to happen. So global right to peace is also a global problem, and global problem has to be solved by global solution. Similarly, right to environment. Much has been talked about environment. There are a number of conferences all over the world regarding the protection of environment and climate change. And cutting trees in one part of the world will automatically affect cutting trees in another part of the world. So if you have to protect the environment, then you have to, all people of the world, they have to take care of the environment. So these are the three generations of human rights. But as you know, from the title I pointed out that towards fourth generation of human rights, a way forward. Till now, I was just giving you the background. I was just giving you the background of how human rights have developed, what is the concept, what are the phases, what is the situation in India, what is the global context. And I have given referral about the three generations of human rights as given by Carol Bassett. But I have started talking about the fourth generation of human rights. When I was teaching in a classroom, some of the time I refer about the fourth generation of human rights in newspaper and somewhere else. I remember when I talked about fourth generation of human rights, I don't think much of the books are available which will be referring about the fourth generation of human rights. In newspaper, in debate, in discussion, you might find some references about the fourth generation of human rights. For example, I remember that some students in Kerala, they were demanding one right, that is right to internet. Today, you are living in a new India, you are living in a new world. Today, people are not happy with the basic needs of life. We are not the new India after particularly 2000 new millennium. We are not happy with just the basic things of life. We need more. So today we are talking right to internet. Some people are talking that we need a fourth generation of human rights. And what will be the fourth generation of human rights? One such example is right to internet, for example. Students all over the country, they are demanding that a student must have right to internet. And I remember there was a case in Kerala, probably the Kerala High Court listened to a girl student. The girl student was to appear for examination and there was no electric supply probably, if I am not wrong, and she could not read and therefore she could not appear in the examination. And some legal battles were went and she went to the High Court and he said that because there was no internet, I could not prepare and therefore I could not deliver in the examination. And the High Court realized, yes, she is right, and the High Court made a reference that right to internet. So right to net, India is consuming, it is the most probably number one in the use of mobiles and internet. We may not have food, but we must have net connection data. So right to internet is going to be another important generation of human rights. Then people are demanding right to uninterrupted supply of electricity 24 into 7. Remember, one of the indicators of development is that there must be uninterrupted supply of electricity. If you are a developed country, then what is expected of a development country is that the people must have uninterrupted supply of electricity, not power cut. On the one hand, you must be claiming that you are a developed country, but on the other hand, you don't have electricity. There is examination, so much work in the office, bank, transaction. If there is no electricity for 2 or 3 hours, you can realize that how much money the country is losing. So uninterrupted supply of electricity is another demand in this fourth generation. Today people are talking about right to quality food. There was a time when we were happy with food, roti, kapda and makan. If we get food, then we are happy. But today our young generations, they are not happy with the right to food. Rather they want quality food. They want quality food. They want to go to continental hotels. They want pizza, burgers, and a lot number of things, quality foods. So that is another thing which is coming in the fourth generation of human rights. At least right to have a foreign travel once in a life. Young generations are demanding that during the whole life we should have a foreign right to foreign travel. At least once in a life one can go for a travel. Then we have other additions of these rights. You will find or right to go to the maybe after some years, 10 or 20 years, right to go for a space travel. Spacecraft are being prepared, and maybe after 10 or 20 years, the young generations, the country will develop a lot, and they will start demanding that if you are a developed country, at least we should have one right, that is, we should go for space travel at least once in a life. Maybe another generation, that is right to commit suicide. People are talking that you should be given the right to commit suicide. Right to commit, if you are not in a position to tolerate the burden of life, then you are demanding that there should be right to suicide. So these are some of the rights which are on the emergence, and people have started demanding along with others which are in a book form. It is yet to come. Maybe somewhere there are some references, but it will come very soon. So these are fourth generation of human rights. Now the last part of my presentation, I will be cutting short. Last part of my presentation will be that how all the generation of human rights will be possible. Remember, I will just take 5 minutes to 5 or 10 minutes to conclude that this generation, whether you talk of first generation or you talk of second generation or you talk of third generation or you are talking about the fourth generation, who is going to provide you? Different people speaks of different things. According to some, they are pointing out that it is the responsibility of your state. Your state, the country in which you live, has to provide you first, second, third, fourth generation of human rights. But you know, the state is not in a position to provide you all the things that you need. The state is in a habit of withdrawing. Today, you know, you are not a welfare state. The state is not interested in your everything. So we cannot say the statist theory actually. That is the statist theory. The statist theory they are pointing out that it is the responsibility of the state to give you all the generation of human rights. But remember, that is not going to happen. The state cannot provide everything to every people all over the country. Then who will do this? The second part, there are certain groups of people, they are pointing out it should be provided by the supranationalist theory. That is the supranationalist theory. And according to them, they are pointing out this is the responsibility of the leading states in a particular area. For example, India and South Asia. There are some powerful countries, developed countries, America, in Western countries, for example, America, then Britain, France, or here in India, for example, in South Asia, China, there. So the leading in all the leading areas, there are certain countries which are powerful countries, which are dominating countries, and it is the responsibility of this dominating country to take to give the first generation, the second generation, the third generation, and the fourth generation of human rights. But again, you will find this is not going to happen because all these countries in the past we have seen they are coming on the theory of benevolent motivation. They come on the theory of benevolent motivation, but actually they are not coming out of motivation or goodwill, rather they come to exploit you. So we cannot expect these things from them. Then the third group they are pointing out that nobody is to give because naturalist theory is there. The naturalist theory is pointing out that nobody is to give you. The moment you take birth, you have got all these rights. And because rights are prior to state, they are pointing out human beings were there prior to state. And rights are prior to state. So therefore, it is the responsibility of the state to protect and promote your rights. And that is what is naturalist theory. There are some people who are talking that this is the responsibility of the United Nations and all other international organizations. They are giving it the theory, supranationalist theory. And all the generation of human rights will be provided by these United Nations and all other powerful international organizations. But as you know, the 21st century is a century of PP, public sector and private sector. There are certain groups of people who are pointing out transnational theory that all the generation of human rights will be given by NGO, non-governmental organization. The government cannot give you everything. the NGO, the private sector has to come in and it will provide you everything. But let me conclude by telling that neither state, not powerful states, nor NGO, nor anyone is going to give your human rights. Then what you have done? The last theory is populist theory. It is the people of the world, the advocates of the populist theory, they are pointing out that if you demand or if you want one, second, third, fourth generation of human rights, whatever you want, you have to have a global movement. Global movement is necessary. The people of the world must unite. They must awake. They must arise and awake. They must be conscious. They must start demanding about their rights. And this is the only way that we can achieve all these rights, including the first, the second generation, the third generation, and fourth generation of human rights. I will not take more of the time, 10 minutes left for an introduction. Thank you, Dr. Mishra. Probably I took slightly long. Now the rest of the time we can engage if there is some questions or some clarifications. So with this, I conclude my speech. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mishra.
So thank you, Dr. Patel. Again, it's a request. Take some rest and be calm. So
No,
I
I am
can
okay.
see,
I am okay.
I can see, your restlessness so far as this, concept human right or topic human right is concerned. I have seen that on human right, you have a, emotional attachment with that concept. And in your talk, I found that it was very much rudimentary, and I understand that it will help our students to large extent. They got a very conceptual clarity and a overall essence of this topic. I think I'm not a human rights expert, but yes, I'm the student of an human rights expert, Professor Hargopal. And many times we heard that human right is right to be human. So it is a right to be human. It means uh, when I'm exercising my rights, that exercise must make me a human, and then only I will be the, or I can be the part of human right movement, and human right violation can be eradicated or can be controlled to large extent. So it is all about right to be human. So to what extent, I think we need to ask this question at this juncture: to what extent our right has made us human? That's the question I think theoretically we need to ask before protecting the human right. So, being a theoretical person, I always understand concept theoretically, and if there is any flaw in the theory, then it is reflected in the practice as well. So we have been experiencing, even today, there are different forms of human right violation, and who is violating against whom, it is subject, or it is subjected to interpretation. But certainly we are not happy. We are not happy. So I think rights must produce happiness within us. With this, small, little observation on your talk, I welcome Professor Vishnu Chaudhary. He is with us. I request him to give his observation on, Dr. Patel's deliberation. Yes, Vishnu sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Himanshu Babu. I see very active Dr. Patel even after superannuation. This is a good trend, and people will be benefited. Students particularly will be benefited. I have heard his lecture from the very beginning. It was very exhaustive. It was systematically conveyed to the students. But within 1 hour or 2 hours, we cannot give justice to such a broad topic like human rights. But basically, when we were students, whenever we were listening about human rights, I'm talking of 70s, we were talking about police torture of the inmates in the jail, and these are the human rights violation, or torture against women also. But now the canvas has become very broad. As Dr. Patel has rightly said, that it has come in a very evolutionary manner. But students must note what is the difference between human rights vis-a-vis fundamental rights, vis-a-vis natural rights, and vis-a-vis ordinary legal rights. These things that they must be made fundamentally clear. Regarding the fourth generations of human rights, he has narrated very clearly that the first generation was the civil rights and the political rights. The second generation being economic, social, and cultural rights, where we included things like employment, housing, healthcare, decent standard of living. In the second generation, we also covered solidarity rights, right to peace, right to have environmental protection or environmental law, right to have humanitarian assistance in case of some disaster, and right to the ethnic, religious, and linguistic minorities. In the third stage, as he has rightly said, we considered human rights in terms of right to development, right in terms of group rights, and ecological rights. In the fourth generations, and Dr. Patel's discussion was focusing on fourth generation, we find human rights in the information society, communication rights, right to have freedom of information, then right of the future generations, right belonging to scientific engineering, and overall it was rights for the entire humanity, or humanity as a whole. So 5 core principles have been highlighted, and these are: 1, dignity, fairness, equality, respect, and independence. It has been rightly said that the present day world or the future world must ensure for the people 3 E's. First E is economic prosperity of every country, in every nook and corner of the world. Second is equity, that is the need of the hour. And third is environmental security. But when we talk about rights, as Mahatma Gandhi rightly said, we must also talk about duties. Rights and duties, they go together. We cannot separate them. But coming to the concluding part of my observation, when we talk of human rights, we talk of the rights of the women. It is said, women's rights are human rights. It is a quotation, it is a question, it is an observation. Secondly, rights of the children. Much have been talked about, much have been written on rights of the children. Third is rights of the minorities. In every country, you have religious minorities, ethnic minorities, linguistic minorities. So they have to be protected. Their problems have been attended to. Then rights of the indigenous people. For example, when we talk about rights of the people in India, we mostly talk about the tribal rights, the Dalit rights, and the women's rights. These are the 3 disadvantaged sectors of the Indian society. But what is the problem? We have got it in 48. the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have incorporated them in our Indian Constitution. If you keep one side, the 30 articles of 30 provisions or articles of the Charter of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights one side, and you keep the fundamental rights under Part 3 and Directive Principles of State Policy under Part 4 in the right-hand side, you find many of them are tallying. Many of the fundamental rights that we have in the Constitution of India, as well as the Directive Principles of State Policy Chapter, they have been brought from the very idea, very concept of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. But now we are 2022. What do you find? In India, as well as the world, there you find a hiatus between the rich and the poor, the developed countries and the developing world. Poverty and hunger, these are very common in poorer countries. Poverty is an affront to human dignity. It was remarked by many people. Second is, do we have quality healthcare? Do we have quality education? Universal education I'm talking, maybe for a few. Fourthly, what about social security, especially in India? Then illiteracy is a problem. Then environment is a global problem. Every day we are realizing we are facing, for example, now it is summer. In a place like Barampur, it is so hot. So what would be the condition of Western Odisha? I can imagine. Employment. Unemployment is on the rise. And food security is a great challenge in many parts of the world. Then people living the lives of their own choice. Has it been possible? The answer is an emphatic no. Then we have violence of all types, taking our rights. Look at the situation in Ukraine. I am not supporting Russia or opposing Russia. I am not supposing America or opposing America. But something is happening where innocent lives are being lost. What for? For satisfying the ego, for having their country expanded, or with a view to expand their country or control the whole world, using the weapons that should not have been used against the people. That is why we remember Mahatma Gandhi. What did Mahatma Gandhi say? 4 things which are now required for the world for protecting human rights. First is sustainable development. The need and greed syndrome. The entire Mother Earth has sufficiency to meet the human needs. It cannot meet human greed. Now we are greedy people. We are not satisfied with what we get. Second thing he talked about was means and ends. If your end is good, means are equally to be good, not to follow Machiavellian principle. Third thing he talked about world peace, peace and tranquility, non-violent way of solving world problems. World problems must be solved through discussion, through deliberation, whether bilateral or multilateral. That is how we have in Article 51, the provision in the Directive Principles of State Policy, that we oppose war as an instrument of foreign policy, that we want peaceful solution of international problems. What is happening now? Now the UNO has become powerless. Nobody listens to it. We go to UNO for having certain agenda. We pass some resolution. After coming out of UNO, we violate them. We resolve on environmental conferences, in the world conferences, on some issues. When we come back, we violate them. We give the slogan, health for all, to the world. We are not working at that. And, terrorism, whether it is world terrorism or cross-border terrorism, it is an affront to human rights. Then violence of all types. Whether you talk of communal violence, racial violence, ethical violence, extremist violence. So in the whole world, we are having a violent society. So Gandhi is the only answer, because he propagated that we must go for non-violence. And non-violence is the weapon of the strong, not the weak. That is what Gandhi just said. So the Gandhiji's idea, another idea is on living simple living and high thinking. We try to enjoy life. We try to have what we call a hi-fi life, a sophisticated life. That is never the choice of Mahatma Gandhi. Simple living and high thinking. That was there. So if you talk about the Gandhian approach, he was never in favor of industrialization for big industries. He said machine, yes, but we must produce so in such a manner it must be mass production. It is not mass production, but production for the masses, production by the masses. So only machinery will be utilized only when you go to any village in Odisha or outside. Do you find human elements working, laborers working? Only machines are working. That is what Gandhi talked about. He talked about labor-intensive industries, not capital-intensive industry. What do we find in the world today? Only capital-intensive industry. So we have so many problems. It can be discussed for days and days. But finally, I would say human rights will be protected where the entire humanity, the 700 crores of people's interest must be kept in mind, giving them food. Look at one example. This pandemic came, COVID-19. Where from it came, nobody knows. Controversial. How it came, nobody knows. But we lost our kith and kin. We ourselves lived a life, I should say unsocial life. I was not prepared to go to my friend. I am not prepared to talk to my neighbor. I am not prepared to go to market. And what has happened? Where healthcare system in countries like Germany, America, Italy, they claim that we have the best healthcare system, the casualty is more. So they become helpless. So how to free people from the scourge of war? That was the purpose why UNO was established. Now everybody is thinking in terms of Third World War. Why? We see in the international politics ego, personality cult, expansionism, and how to claim that it is the world leader. It is the country which must control the entire world. So it is a fight for power. Gandhiji never wanted power-centric politics. He always talked about service-centered politics. So I have given you 5-6 items. If you read Gandhi, analyze Gandhi, Gandhi, in my opinion, is the solution to protect the world for future, in future. With these few words, I again profusely thank Dr. Patel. He seems to be retired but not tired. We'll be meeting in different interactions in future. I'm a very regular member of this group, listening to scholars of different parts of the country, different universities, and I enjoy them. Thank you.
So thank you, Vishnu sir. I mean, your last statement was very catchy, that though you are retired, but you are not tired. That was wonderful. And I find your observation is quite relevant. I think remembering Gandhi is the only way to protect the human right, protect victims from this human right violation, or to create a better system. So thank you, Professor Chaudhary. Now let me go back to the questions asked by the participants. Sir, Patel sir, can you hear me? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Okay, the first question is being asked, how can government harmonize human rights with the burning issues of displacement and rehabilitation scheme of development?
Should I respond to this?
Yeah, one by one you will respond.
You see, in fact, this is a very tricky question because when you talk of development and on the other hand human rights and government, these are two sides of the different angle, because government is the most important violator of human rights of the people. If you ask me a question, who is the number one violator of the rights of the people, then the answer will be the government. And development, on the other hand, development has to take place. There is no doubt about it that we need development. But then again, what type of development we need, or what type of development the government needs? Development in the name of development is not sufficient. Development must be sustainable development. And the government can harmonize the developmental efforts, whatever it is taking, when it goes for a developmental effort, for example, establishing a plant or making a dam, for example, or doing something for the benefit of the people, then there should be proper investigation, proper identification, there should be proper package of the affected people, and there should be everything should be taken care of. The government can, if the government is seriously interested in protecting and promoting the human rights of the people on the one hand and going for the developmental efforts on the other hand, that can be done. But for that, the government has to take serious efforts. It has to go into detail that what is the cost benefit analysis, what we are likely to get from the project, or what we are likely to get from the plant, or whatever we are going for. What is the cost in terms of human cost? What is the human cost we are paying for the developmental project? That has to be taken care of. So there can be harmonization of the efforts of the government on the one end, and on the other end, the developmental efforts. But for that, as I was referring that the government has to make homework. It has to carry out a proper investigation, identification, proper package announcement, and proper rehabilitation, and all those things which are necessary for taking care of the human content of the population. Then it can be possible.
The second question is, how can one adjust one's personal right with in the framework of multicultural and diversified society of today?
How, you see, this is again it is true that we are living in a multifaceted or diversified society where we are exposed to cultural attack, that we today we refer it is a cultural invasion. And in such a situation of cultural invasion, how can you protect your own right? But as you know, the same thing, we must make up our mind that today we are living in a world where everything is available to you. In the net, in the technology, you will find everything at the press of a button. You are exposed to all cultural onslaught from different parts of the world. You are exposed to different cultures, different things, different settings, different idea, and different foods and everything. But on the whole, if you are uh, keen enough, or if you are serious enough that your cultural own identity you want to protect it, then the decision has to be yours. You can look into the cultural onslaught, you can look into everything, but at the end of the day, you must have the ability of strength of your mind to protect that this is my culture, and because this is my culture, I will go by it, I will protect it, and I will do this. Then only this is possible. Otherwise, in a globalized world where everything is becoming global, this may not be possible. You have to have your strength of mind, strength of character, and only in that case you can protect your own rights in the middle of the cultural invasion. That is the only way out.
So the last question is asked by Pradeep. It is said that rights entail duties. Since human rights are the rights provided to human beings by virtue of being human, when a person is not doing his or her duties, whether he or she is entitled to human right.
Uh, you see, this is a actually moral question, but also it legally, what can I say? Because you see,
Uh,
we have got all rights and we have also have got duties. For example, we have got fundamental rights and fundamental duties in our Indian Constitution. So far as fundamental rights are there, we are very aggressive. But so far as fundamental duties are there, we are not that much active. We are not that much aggressive. So it is up to the individual. It is up to the individual that we should be educated enough. We should be good enough. We should be moral enough. We should be better citizen. We should be provided with education and all that moral atmosphere to take care of our duties also. Otherwise, if of course, right now I think if you are not going your duty, if you are not fulfilling your duty, then you are visited by punishment. I think there are certain provisions. You have got certain, for example, you have to take care of your old parents today. That is a duty. That when your parents are old, you have to take care of. And if you are not taking care of, then you have to have punishment. So maybe the legal system, maybe the society, or maybe the political system will take some more steps in future, whereby they will enforce the duties of the individual in the middle of the engine of their rights. It is not that we should only we should live in a culture where we should be careful about only our rights and not careful about duties. And I think in future we have to be more aware. We have to be more cautious about fulfilling your duty, our duties. Otherwise, uh, problems will be there legally, socially, and politically.
So let me handle the questions of Pradeep in a different way. I was supposed to ask this question to Dr. Patel, that we have women rights, children right, tribal right, Dalit right. So can we think of when we are talking about women right, can we think of men's right? I think if I'll ask such question, it will be a wrong question because somewhere I didn't understand what is right. Remember Hargopal's talk. The first statement Hargopal started, human right is a right to be human. So right to be human means to be a human, you have to do certain duties. So through duties, you will ensure your rights. So rights are not special privileges, rather than rights are actually the responsibility. If you have right, then you have the responsibility to protect the same rights what you have, the same rights of other. I think Pradeep, you need to think through it. I mean, when you are having right, then your old parents, if the wife is having right, then the same right is also with her husband, right? So basically, if you are a seeker of right, you should always think about others' right first. You should
Yes.
always, I mean, if you are thinking about others' right, then actually you are doing duty. So duty is the gateway to your right. If you want to ensure right, then you have to do your duty first. Without doing duty, you cannot ensure your right, and no institution can ensure it. So I hope, Pradeep, you got the answer. So thank you, Dr. Patel. And the last question is asked by Subhasri: right to commit suicide is a human right. How to justify it?
No, no, no. I have not pointed out, Subhasri, that right to commit suicide is already a human right. I am not telling that. I just pointed out that people all over the world, they have started demanding that suppose someone is suffering from a problem, medical problem, and his life is intolerable. intolerable physically or mentally. He's restless. His condition is very precarious, and he don't want to leave. So whether in that case we can have or we can allow the mercy right to mercy, mercy killing, that is a concept known as mercy killing. So people are demanding all over the world that we should have a right like that type, that we should have a right that if someone is physically or mentally very in a precarious situation and he don't want to leave, then he should be allowed to die. And I think it will take some more time, some countries of the world to think of about it seriously, and whether some of the countries they will allow or some of the countries they may not allow, because we don't know how to decide and who will decide or what parameters will be decided. Will decide that whether a person is in an intolerable situation or in a tolerable situation. That will lead to a number of controversies. So we have to rethink about that right to commit suicide, whether it should at all be there, and if it will be there, how to not to manipulate it, and how that can be only in the rarest of the rare cases. Rarest of the rare cases, I say, unless if someone is in life is intolerable, there should not be right to commit suicide. That is my personal observation.
Subhasri, somewhere in the talk, I related rights with happiness. Your rights must produce happiness. Suppose if you are a very diseased body and you are giving pain to others and you are giving pain to yourself, and there is no possibility of your life. I mean, you may not live long. So in that situation, I have also seen, the family members, they ask God, you don't give too much of pain, you just take him back to you, right? And at the same time, the patient also, want that I want death, I don't want any pain. So that's how I think we can justify the right to commit suicide, but it is in a special situation or occasion. So we are at the last part of this event. Now I request Ananta Varik. He is the PhD student of Dr. Suresh Chandra Patel, and recently he has got SSB. He has qualified SSB. So I request Ananta to provide vote of thanks to our speaker today.
Sir, I am audible, sir.
Okay, you're audible.
Sir, first I wish a pleasant evening to all of you, and offering my namaskar to my guide or supervisor under whom I am pursuing my PhD. First, since I have been entrusted with the functions of providing vote of thanks, so I am performing my duties. Actually, it was under the pretext of providing vote of thanks. Actually, my intention is to meet my guide or supervisors through this web talk. First of all, I would like to thank to Dr. Patel sir, who is my guide or supervisor, and who is the chief speaker of today's web talk, for his systematic presentations over the web talk entitled the fourth generation of human rights, a way forward. In this web talk, sir provided a lot of knowledge regarding the human rights, and his presentations covered about the concept of human rights, the importance of human rights, the growth and evolution of human rights, different phases of development of human rights, different theories of human rights. So all these things, I think the participants might have acquired and accumulated a lot of knowledge regarding the human rights, which will go a long way in nurturing their mind and enlarge their mental horizons regarding the concept of human rights. And since I am working under his guidance, Dr. Patel sir, I am well known about his proficiency and excellence, because I have completed my MPhil under his guidance, as well as I am pursuing also PhD under his guidance. So I know very well that the sir is a very versatile teacher in many fields, because I have 7 years of experiments and I am in touch with him for last 7 years. Secondly, I would like to thank to Dr. Mishra sir, who is the convener of this webinar, who has been conducting for more than 40 or 50 webinar, and through which he is providing a golden opportunity to the students, not only for the Odisha as well as outside of the Odisha, to acquire and accumulate knowledge during our pandemic COVID period and in the present situations also. Then I would like to thank you. I would like to thank to our Chaudhary sir, who is the regular member or participants of this of the webinar, and his opinion or his observations regarding the today's web talk will also go a long way in providing extra knowledge towards the students with regard to the concept of human rights. I would and finally, all the participants are also thanked from the deep of my heart because they listen the web talk with patience and raised very relevant and reliable questions, and for that I would like to thank them also. And finally, I would like to thank to my guide or supervisor from the deep of my heart for handling all the relevant and relevant questions very simply or very brilliantly. Thank you very much, sir. It gives me divine pleasure to provide a vote of thanks on the web talk where my guide or my supervisor is the chief speaker. So this was just.
So thank you, Ananta. I designed it in such a way that
Sir.
you people will meet, you people will interact,
Yes,
and
sir, yes.
both the speaker and the student, you will get satisfaction from each other. So thank you, Anand. Thank you
Yes, sir.
for your vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Now this is the end of this event. So on behalf of all, I am thankful to Patel sir, and let me correct Ananta to you. Nothing is
Yes.
a extra knowledge.
Sir,
Knowledge
sir.
is knowledge. There is
Yes, sir.
contestation. There is observation. There is
Sir.
diversities. I think Professor Vishnu Chaudhary gave a very wonderful. I think it is one of his best observation. I think the way he justified Gandhi and the way he connected Gandhi with human right, that through Gandhi, the violation of human right can be curtailed to large extent. So thank you one and all. So Patel sir, namaskar.
Thank you, sir.
So
Thank you
I'm
so much, sir.
ending.
Namaste.
I'm